Okay, we're going to get started. So if everyone could come find a seat. I'm going to try and speak loudly. I think this is working, but I don't know if it's. Oh, there we go. Is that better? It's a pretty small crowd, so I think I can. I have a pretty loud voice. So, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming this evening. My name is Matt Johnson. I'm a capital project manager with the Montgomery County Department of Transportation. I'm joined this evening by a few colleagues from Parker Rodriguez, our consultant. We have Dan Everett and Suheng Liu. And we also have Michael Mercado, who's another one of our consultants. And in the back, we have Michael Mitchell, also from DOT, and Jonathan Newman from the Regional Services Center. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. I just want to, I'm going to just give a brief introduction to the project, and I'm going to let Dan take it over from there. I'm sure you're all familiar with Newell Street. It's only about a block and a half from here. This is my contact information. This will appear again at the end of the screen. This presentation and all of the meeting materials that you see here are available on our project webpage. So if you go to MCDOT, the Bikeways page is where it's currently housed. You can, even this is not a bike project necessarily, but that's where it's currently housed. You can find a link to this, all this information, so you can take pictures of it, you can take notes, that's great, but it is available online, so you can also get it that way. So I just want to make sure we set the stage and we're all on the same page here. So as I'm sure most of you are aware, during the pandemic, Newell Street was closed to traffic to create more space for outdoor social gathering and social distancing, and it has subsequently reopened to cars. This study kind of came out of that based on trying to have a better understanding of maybe what the future of Newell Street should look like. Do we want to go back to a situation like we had during the pandemic where we maybe had it closed to traffic some of the time or all of the time? Do we want to keep it open to cars? Do we want to reconfigure it? So we don't have the answers to those questions yet. We're not going to give you the answer to those questions tonight because we're not at that stage of the process yet. What we are doing right now is we're starting a study. So you'll see some concepts over here. These are rough sketches. Think of these as back of the napkin sketches after a conversation. These are mainly to give you something to reflect on and talk about, because if we showed up with nothing, it might be hard for you to imagine the different scenarios that we were talking about. So this gives us something to talk about. None of these have been vetted. None of these have gone through the study process yet. They haven't been subject to public comment yet. This is part of why you're here, is to give us your feedback. If you have any of these that you really like or any of these that you really hate, we want to hear that. But if you think that it's maybe mostly in the right direction, but you think something else should be different, or you like a little change here or there, that's the kind of great feedback that we could have right now. So we will be having another meeting probably in about 6 months after this study is completed to get more feedback, and that'll be kind of the end of the study phase. We don't have any money currently for design, so this is not something that's imminently happening. This is not something you have to worry about showing up tomorrow, right? There's no money for design, there's no money for construction right now. This is just a study to look at how things are. We're going to have a question and answer period at the end.
I was going to ask you if you want to have questions at the end.
Yeah, we're going to have a question and comment period at the end, so if you don't mind holding those. And so with that, this image on the screen here shows sort of some context about where Newell Street is. I'm sure most of you are familiar with that. We're in the neighborhood. In fact, we are down here. There we go. If I can, laser doesn't want to show up on the thing, but we're here. We're in this building right here, just for context, so you're oriented. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dan to give the rest of the presentation, and then I'll come back for questions at the end.
Hi, I'm Dan Everett. So I'm with Parker Rodriguez. We're a landscape architecture and urban planning firm, and we were contacted by MCDOT to kind of look at the overall, what could happen here. So we stepped back and we started looking at the Silver Spring master plan and just kind of what they had laid out. So this first slide has roadway classification. You can see the kind of the magenta lines are some of the major lines. Some of them have BRT. You can see the purple line sweeping through. You see Metro and where the train comes through. And our site is here. Currently, it's classified as a business shared street. And so I think it was it's a small street. And you'll see as we kind of move through here at the Silver Spring Master Plan for Urban Parks, it's part of the Green Loop connectors. So there's the kind of the inner loop and the outer loop. that is part of the overall master plan. So these are meant to be more green streets, bike lanes, and really part of the open space circulation around Silver Spring that'll be implemented over time. So you'll start to see these different concepts become realized in the future, including some connections. So again, Newell Street is at the highlighted location. If we look at the overall park system, there's a series of small parks around here. And Newell Street, when it was closed, it started to feel like maybe a larger park, a little bit more of a larger node that becomes significant within the neighborhood. But it's interesting to see how this kind of fits in with the overall downtown master plan in terms of a park system. So within that, if we focus in on just the this quadrant of Silver Spring, you can see how this open spaces tie in together. There's proposed protected crossings that are meant to come in. This is part of that Green Street connector. There's new pedestrian links that are planned, like to the Blairs. New connectors that are planned kind of mid-block. And here you can see part of this is actually realized, others are planned. So those will get implemented over time. It all depends on how these different properties kind of redevelop and at what stage they are. It could be a few years, it could be 15, 20 years. So it's all part of that's why they do a master plan, so that in the end it all kind of makes sense together. And that's part of what we're looking at, is how does Newell Street really kind of fit within that? In terms of is it important as a street? I think that's part of community feedback we'll get. Is it important more as an open space? It lends itself to I think looking at it in different ways. So when we look at it just kind of as it is today, I'm just going to step over here. So Maryland 410 is here. We have Blair Mill Road comes in, and they converge at kind of a point. Now, from a traffic engineer standpoint, they're not going to like that. So really, what they would like to have a separated intersection. It obviously creates traffic timing issues in there. And you can see like where there's 2 lanes each way on Maryland 410. Blair Mill Road is a 2-way street. Newell Street to the kind of to the west of Kennett Street, and on Kennett Street, those have parking indicated by the yellow. And you can kind of see the cars marked out there. This little block of Newell Street does not have what? East-West Highway. Yeah. So this block does not have any parking on it. So it's strictly a pass-through road, and it does have share arrows for bikes. So it's a shared lane road. Now, if we look at that a little bit closer, you can kind of see these are shared lanes on Newell Street. You can see the turn lanes turning right onto East-West Highway or 410. And here's some of the existing photos, just since we're not out there on site. So what's interesting is Acorn Park comes right to the curb there, which it kind of forms a blunt end to that park. I think when the roadway was closed, there was a little bit more flow out into the park. So from our standpoint, they basically asked us, what do you see in the park? And from a potential perspective, and we started to look at this and the way it kind of interacts, and the major pedestrian circulation. Well, I'll step back here. So if we cut some street sections through here, you can see we noted the width of the lane. So where you have 3 lanes and you have the turn lane, they're about 8-foot, 9-foot lanes going east. And then coming west on Newell Street, it's about a 12-foot 6-lane with the shared bike lane that's part of that. So basically the bike lane at the turn lane, it's shared with that turn lane. Here's a major pedestrian circulation. So there is no pedestrian circulation on the north side of Newell Street. Pedestrian circulation is along this side and then through Acorn Park currently. It's really kind of a park circulation along that side. On the other side of Newell Street, on the north side, it's more of a kind of a traditional sidewalk. There's beautiful London planes that line that. And then you can kind of see in view 2 the park sidewalk through Acorn Park. And then this view 3, which is indicated by the number 3 in here, you can see where the existing walkway is along the curb, and then it turns in at the that kind of the Acorn Pavilion. Overall, we kind of looked at this as kind of broken into kind of 3 pieces. Acorn Park currently is a little over 1/4 of an acre. It's 381 feet long, so it's almost it's a football field long, just kind of size-wise. The current street is about 6,300 square feet, and then Argent Park on the north side is about 4,200 square feet. So it ends up becoming almost a half acre if you kind of look at all of those together. So, we kind of said, there's something that's kind of nice about, linking these across. You actually get a pretty significant open space. Instead of these kind of smaller little pocket parks, it actually starts to become, could become a significant open space. Looking at the topo, this is the side of the spring, and the spring is, located here for Silver Spring. That's kind of a nice feature. It is at the kind of the low point. So the road sweeps down and then sweeps back up the east-west highway. Forms kind of a nice, enclosure to that space. The slope of the street is not tremendous, but it is sloped. It's traditional kind of what you'd consider flat for like sidewalks, about 2%. This is about 4%. So the street is sloping down. So it makes it a little hard to use just as a flat space as it is today. But there are uses that you could put within that, and we think we could utilize most of that space if we wanted to go kind of that route. Looking at existing trees, there's some really nice trees. There's a beautiful big pin oak that is at the heart of kind of the Acorn Park. There's a white oak right behind the pavilion. Again, a nice tree. It's a nice southern magnolia at this corner. Honey locust out on East-West Highway 410. And another white oak, smaller white oak, has planted fairly recently, kind of at the west end of Acorn Park. And then we have these London planes that kind of line the street along the north side of Newell Street. Here's some of those trees today. So we think those are a real resource. They're actually, they're kind of a defining element, I think, of this space. Again, kind of that view. And you can see it's actually, if you look at the overall space, it's actually really quite nice. And then the street kind of bisects that space. There was a plan that was prepared for Acorn Park as part of a renovation that brought a walkway along the curb of Newell Street. I believe there's a boardwalk that swept through and kind of tried to engage the spring, and kind of minimal grading around the existing trees here and here. And I'm not exactly sure where that stands, but I know with it kind of got stalled as far as I can tell. So, what are the objectives of this space? Really, it's kind of to bring the community together. If this space is to be, redeveloped, create, and encourage social interaction, allow places for people to just come out and enjoy open space, individually, together, provide a variety of functions for different ages and different mobility, provide safe and pleasant pedestrian connectivity between the parks. So we're really trying to enhance, this should be an enhancement for the neighborhood, and kind of pull in as much as we can and really make this unique, create a unique living opportunity. We'll have some examples of some photos you can see, but provide opportunities for games, farmers markets, food trucks, really be able to kind of program it and have it, have a life at different times of the week and throughout the year. provide a unique destination within Silver Spring, which complements the existing Acorn Park. This really should be celebrated. It deserves more maybe the significance that it has today. And then we want to help and define the character identity and celebrate, kind of the legacy. We want to support public transportation and bicycling through that space like it is today, and then integrate sustainable practice in the landscape. And that's not just the environment, that's really, sustainability also means the neighborhood. If it's not sustainable for the neighborhood in terms of people enjoying it, it's not going to be loved and it's going to be forgotten. And that's, kind of legacy of parks, is if they're designed and they're loved, they really become sustainable because the community gets behind that. So we went through a couple schemes, and we kind of started with kind of light interventions potential, and then we kind of looked at, like what if we, really took our blinders off and looked at something really kind of different. So this first scheme, we're looking at kind of, blocking off, similar to what we did during the pandemic. Block off the eastbound lane, create a one-way street with a shared path through. We'd have a shared lane on the north side with a dedicated bike lane on that south side. So it really promotes bicycle activity, and then it allows, kind of in the yellow, to allow a shared pedestrian space in the street and kind of help expand Acorn Park and allow people to, allow that kind of the side of the park to breathe. Again, the park goes right to the curb, and there's not really doesn't allow you to circulate on that side of the park. So we thought this expanded Acorn Park allows it to, go back and become a street potentially in the future. It also doesn't provide doesn't create a lot of intervention right from the beginning. Some of those examples of what we could do is kind of through paint and intervention. So we can still maintain the street, bring out some street furniture, do some kind of fun things, whether it's built in, and really, make the pedestrians feel safe on that side, and then do, kind of have fun and make it creative, make it a fun space, something that's memorable, and then ties in with the overall. These are just images; they're not meant to be realistic proposals. It's really just kind of, give you an idea of what these spaces could possibly be. Kind of concept 2 said, well, what if we made this a permanent? What if we just expanded Acorn Park permanently? We put a new curb. That's kind of represented by the kind of the golden line around here. That expands the park, still maintains kind of the shared bikeway, travelway on the north as a one-way heading west, and then we create that dedicated bike lane on the south side of Newell Street, connecting out to East-West Highway. We think this allows it, it allows more flexibility to it. Just expands the park. The curb provides a little bit more protection for pedestrians within the park, and expands the park, but still maintains vehicular circulation. Some examples of that. Again, these are just concepts. This one's a little bit more hardscaped, a little more urban, allow more flexibility. You could have food trucks in there. You could have, different kind of programmed activities, and maybe not as, more of a kind of an urban park. Concept 3 would be similar to what was done during the pandemic, where you close the street with kind of artistic barricades at the ends, really demarcates it in a definitive way that people know that the street is definitely closed, not with the kind of temporary barriers, but ways that could be, I guess everything could be pulled up. And it also doesn't require a lot of investment. We could do this, you could do something fairly quick. It could be something that's phased. So you could start, close the street, maintain bike lanes on the north side, and then as the community kind of starts to live with it for a little bit, you decide maybe what permanently you'd want to do with Newell Street. And here's some of those examples. could have, you can have a lot of effect with just, kind of treating the paved surface artistically, bringing in some planters. Again, it's not a tremendous investment, and it really allows people to kind of see how this space could possibly be used and start to live with it, and not have it be, like what was done in the pandemic was something that was, very temporary. It could be pulled up, very quickly. This is a little bit more permanent, but again, all temporary. Nothing's a tremendous investment, and the community could decide, in 10 years that, hey, this is a bad idea. We really want circulation in here. This last concept is, let's really connect Argent Park to Acorn Park and really make this a park, really make it more of a destination. Again, like I was saying earlier, it's about a half acre between the two. Argent Park is a public-private space. Is maintained by the residential community, but really I think this would function as kind of a larger public space. That would mean doing a new curb line that ends Newell Street here and then connects there. One thing that's positive, I guess, from a traffic standpoint is Blair Mill Road and East-West Highway are one intersection, and you don't have the conflict with traffic. Bikes in this scenario could, they could maybe circulate through the park a little bit more seamlessly. Depend on that. I think there's a lot more flexibility as to where bike lanes could go. So I think there's a lot more possibilities here, and we didn't really put a lot of diagrams in terms of how circulation would occur, because I think at this point you could really kind of take your take all your any preconceived notions you have and really design it as a really destination park. And I think in this case you would really rethink it, create the kind of space you really want. I think it could be a lot more green. We could tie everything together. You aren't trying to have some vehicular circulation or trying to keep the street in place. You really kind of design this place as a cohesive overall experience. And so that's kind of the extreme, I guess I would say. So I think there's a lot of opportunities here. Again, it's it's like what Matt was saying. It's a study, and it's really open for public input. And then we'll kind of cobble all that together, and based on the public input, we can start to generate some other ideas. And what we've done is, I don't know if Matt, you want to talk about it, but we provided a bunch of boards here. We have kind of a preference survey, and what you can do is you can put a green dot on what you like, red dot on what you do not like, and then we have comment cards up here. If you have comments, please give us all your comments. I think you can also give comments on the website that way. There's also Post-it notes. If you have comments on the particular plan, you want to post on that. There's pens up here, and there's a sign-in sheet. You can leave email if you want. Again, we'd love to hear your comments. We're here just to facilitate it. Yeah, please.
So I live at 8045 Newell.
Mm-hmm.
Some of my neighbors are here.
Yeah.
And I frankly, unlike some people in my building, I thought when the street was closed, it was great. A lot of people had problems with it, but
Yeah.
But I guess one question I have is doing nothing an option? And I do appreciate you getting input at the front end, but I guess
Yeah.
I'm wondering if doing nothing is an option. And then my bigger question is, since you did mention sort of a master plan, I'm sure you know there's a park that's going to be built like half a block away on East-West Highway.
Yeah.
Where demolition has already started. And I know it has many uses planned,
Mm-hmm.
but I guess I'm kind of wondering, even though I do favor green space, why money would be spent to do something in such close proximity to that? And then sort of related to that is, In the master plan, there are potential uses for the old Discovery Building. Our neighbor, the storage unit, may be expanded either as a storage unit and or an apartment building. It's all going to create a lot more traffic, and the street potentially will be one-way or closed. So while there's a master plan, I'm wondering if you're taking all that into account and how that would all be sort of massaged.
Yes. So just to repeat the question, make sure I get it. If I missed anything, just correct me. The first is doing nothing an option? Doing nothing is always an option. We didn't create a board for that because we already know what that looks like, right? Not changing anything. There's no money to do anything other than study this right now. So if nothing else happens, then nothing's going to happen, right? We don't have any money, so nothing would happen unless there's a big community support for this, in which case then we find the money to move forward with this. If there's not support for this, then it's likely to stay exactly like it is today. So doing nothing is always an option. Your second question was about sort of related to why we build a park here when there's another park being constructed nearby. The idea here is not necessarily to build a park. The idea here is to sort of reimagine the space based on the community experience that we had during the pandemic. And there was support from some people for retaining that. There was opposition from people for retaining that as well. But it brought up this larger conversation of what should we do with this space? Is there a better use for Newell? And maybe it's still open for traffic, but maybe we make it a little, do we need the right turn lane? Maybe we make it a little smaller. Maybe we put a sidewalk in. Maybe we reconfigure the park a little bit to make it work better. So there's different options. And what I would say in terms of, do we need this park or we have another park? We have these two small parks. And a lot of times, tiny little spaces like that don't work that well, but when you combine them or you connect them, make them a little bit bigger, then those parks and those public spaces work a little bit better. So the sum of the parts is greater than the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, right? That's the saying. So, but again, we're just very early. And then your last question was about development and traffic. What I would say is that yes, we're absolutely considering what's in the development pipeline, what the master plan anticipates, but we're also cognizant of the fact that if you build a city for cars, you get cars, right? There are lots of places you can drive in Silver Spring. There's lots of roads. We don't want to create traffic problems. And in fact, closing this block on Newell Street might actually make traffic work better, as Dan kind of alluded to, because instead of having this weird three-phase signal at East West Highway and Blair Mill and Newell, you'll just have a regular two-phase signal. So you might actually get more traffic through that way. Counterintuitively, you might actually get more traffic through that way. So, and that's actually not, I know it's kind of a bad idea in planning circles to bring up anything about Manhattan, because we're not talking about turning anything into Manhattan. But I'll just say that when they closed Broadway through the squares where Broadway was sort of like this fifth leg intersection, traffic actually got better. People were really worried, you're going to close Broadway, we can't drive down Broadway anymore. Traffic's going to get, and it actually made traffic move better because there were fewer signal phases. So we are aware of that. We will take that development into consideration as part of that. So yes, we're here.
Yeah, sort of building on what you said, like, yeah, I consider any of these an improvement, and, the best park is the one that, or, space is the one that gets built, like, all that. That said, I would strongly favor the fourth option. I think what you said toward the end is kind of key, where we'll have this, probably still a pocket park, a bigger end pocket park, probably where the old tire building is. But it's all pedestrian block, there's not a street between those. So I think it'll help activate both spaces more. And as someone who, during the pandemic, when Acorn Park went from almost never being used to being used a lot to now almost never being used again. And that's frankly because that space is not there. And I think, I have friends with children who used to come by and like now they don't because they don't want their kids running out in traffic or what have you. I think it's I think having it completely closed off is a much larger benefit than any added cost to that. I understand that that's not. Agree with where you point to traffic. I'll also point out that we are a half mile from the biggest bus hub in the region, the Metro, and soon to be a Purple Line station, so that will help all that as well.
Really?
Yeah,
Soon to be?
Subjective.
Subjective.
Even if it doesn't happen, we're still one of the most transit accessible places in frankly the country. So,
I mean, yeah, but that doesn't mean people won't have.
So are you finished?
the only other thing I'd say basically is sort of from a pedestrian safety aspect, sort of building on the kind of thing, like, you know, I walk in the area, don't own a car, still walk everywhere, and that's a very weird, like, I'm used to it, but like, I kind of know I'm taking my life into my hands just with, not necessarily just Newell Street, but having to watch that 3rd Street, whichever the 3rd Street is just, your head needs to be on a swivel.
Yeah.
I think that's another argument for it. So.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the big points, is that that's easily the 2nd worst intersection in, like, at least the area. I would go far as say it's like one of the worst, like maybe the 3rd or 4th worst intersection of all Montgomery County. I just can't imagine like making that intersection make any sense if the street remains open. I've seen a lot of accidents. I've seen a lot of people near misses on that road. I saw like a car get basically flipped in the air because it tried to U-turn because I guess it thought it was a roundabout. There's so much asphalt there. Like, you can't do anything with that intersection. You can't do anything with the road, East-West Highway as a whole, unless you make that intersection a little bit simpler. Because like otherwise you have this like 4-lane road that smooshes down into 2 lanes, but you need all 4 of those lanes in each direction in order to have all the turn lanes you need for this road. I think like the curb lines you drew in the 4th option kind of is like my dream, because I think it allows you to really simplify that intersection. And I think that alone would make this entire street way better. Not Newell Street, but like all of East-West Highway, like way more pleasant.
Thank you for that comment. I will say it used to be more complicated because Blair Mill used to go straight across and over toward Georgia. So a long time ago that was the case. So it used to be a 5-way intersection instead of a 4-way intersection.
I might also add, you know, in terms of pedestrian, I didn't point it out, but there's actually a proposed pedestrian link that comes through here in the future, which is going to make this pedestrian, you know, connectivity across here even more important, I think, in the future.
Thanks. Yep.
So just, right off the top, I support the 4th option. I lived in 8045 Newell for about a year during the pandemic, and it was just so much nicer to have that street blocked off. You know, people actually used Acorn Park. No one uses Acorn Park now. When you go past, it's a ghost town. And I think it did actually make traffic better. You didn't have cars kind of like screaming off of East-West Highway coming into that part of the neighborhood. But I guess as a question too, is there any room for some sort of interim treatment? I mean, just like bringing it back to what it was during the pandemic would be such an improvement.
I think it's premature to talk about that at this point. I think based on what we hear from this engagement process, which is going to last about 6 to 8 months, we can, if there's a huge upswelling of support for doing something interim, I think we could take that back to our leadership and say we think the community would support doing something in the near term. And maybe also something in the long term, like if we ever have money to actually rebuild the street and expand the park, maybe we do something even bigger. That's certainly something that could be considered, but at this point, since we haven't even done the study yet, that's a little premature, but that's a great suggestion, so thank you for that.
It's just a little frustrating that, you know, something that happened basically overnight during the pandemic requires, I mean, realistically, what, like a year and a half of study, finding the money, building the thing, when it's, I mean, Montgomery County DOT has 4 traffic barriers somewhere they can put there, right? Like this is.
It's not my division, so I don't want to speak for our traffic team, but.
I've already commented, but the fact that we're even having this meeting, I think, is pretty obvious to like everyone. I've never met anyone who wasn't like pretty much completely in support of this. I went to every meeting about this park when they were reopening it, and basically it was excuse number 1, then excuse number 2, and then excuse number 3, and then they were like, it doesn't matter, it's illegal for this park to exist, we have to demolish it, it has to exist as a road. And now we're having another meeting where there's like, it's gonna be maybe a park again. I think there's no other way to interpret that other than that the response must have been overwhelmingly negative to closing this park.
Those decisions were made by a different division. I wasn't involved in those. I'm in our capital projects team. So what I would say is we heard it from both sides, and I think we were in a very unique situation in 2020 and 2021 and into 2022 where we had a situation that really hadn't occurred in a century, and that was a global pandemic. And we saw that traffic volumes across the region across the country dropped precipitously. And so it was an opportunity for us to reimagine streets. Traffic is coming back now. We're starting to see, like I came here on the metro, and the metro was crowded, not just because they were having a meltdown. It was already crowded before the meltdown started, which is why I was late. I apologize. But you know, people are going back to work more and more. So I think when it was reopened to traffic, there was sort of we weren't sure what the near-term future was going to hold. But we're having this conversation now We did hear conversations on both sides. I think I saw your hand. Yep.
No, yeah, I was, yeah, I live at 1200 Blair Mill, so right in the corner. I actually looked down the intersection, and it's been amazing the number of accidents and the near misses and screeches that you hear at all hours since reopening that street. I think people have kind of lost the whole sense of how to manage that intersection. And so I'm glad that we're having this conversation. I also understand that a lot of different departments, a lot of different communications. We're going down to the session that the Parks Department held in terms of that new park, and they were also they didn't really understand what MDOT was doing or what's going on with the street or what other departments doing what, etc. So I had encouraged that at some point it'd be great to have a joint meeting where we have folks from all these departments, that if we're going to have all these different meetings, just to kind of bring folks together and have a cohesive conversation. But I also really acknowledge and thank you guys for sending around flyers, because I know that wasn't done in previous moments, and I know at the start I also recognize that's not enough. I encourage you guys, as you guys are looking for feedback, to put signage at the park, because I know that the only signage for the Parks Department was put at the actual tire shop down a road that no one really walks down unless you really need to, unless you're going to the brewery. So there was, which I heard, I was bummed out for that. But so I think it'd be great just to have more communication and more signage there to letting folks know that you're studying this, to really get information from the folks that don't, look at the mail and just toss it aside, or are trying to go to the park and don't use it anymore. But the park was a real salvation for the pandemic, and really brought a cohesive community element. So I really appreciate the fact that you're also, I think in scenario 3, you mentioned bringing programming, bringing farmers markets, bringing events, bring people to the park and really reintroduce people to a space, which I think is an essential piece to that, to bring people back. So I just want to lift that up and really thank you guys for considering that.
Thanks. I see you have a hand up, so 1 second. You're raising your hand again. I want to give everyone a chance to look at the boards, and the staff is here, so if you have additional questions or comments, you can talk to us, but I'm going to take these last 2 questions, and then we'll break out. Yes?
Yeah, I share a lot of the same sentiments with my neighbors here. I think any of these options would be better than nothing. I think I would prefer the 4th option. And I came in late, so it sounds like maybe there was some discussion about how to activate the space. I know you said it was premature to talk about an interim option, but I do think that would be really great, because I know how long it can take to get capital projects done in this county. And I think that my biggest thing was that during the pandemic, it was so nice to have the food trucks there. Mm-hmm. And I know that a lot of that was handled by Tom Hucker's office, and I would kind of like that to be more of a function of the Parks Department or whoever is in charge of this project, rather than reliant on one staffer in a council member's office. So I'm glad that there were, I guess, some discussions about how to activate that space, because I think that was a huge asset.
Thanks. Yep.
So this may not be the right place to ask this, but speaking of interim measures, and I had actually brought this to transportation's attention, and it was basically, on Newell Street, at the corner of Newell and Kennett, facing going towards East-West Highway, is there any chance of getting a stop sign there? Because even our building, you come out of our garage and you just people shoot around the corner, and the only stop sign now is the one that's actually on Kennett, right at the park. And it is just a dangerous corner.
Yeah, so that question would be directed to our traffic division, because they manage the operations on the road. So
they told me they would only do that if it could be 4-way, and there's only 2 corners, so it'd be hard to do 4-way.
yeah, so I'll just, if you ever have a request like that, not just that one, but any request, you can email trafficops, TRAFFICOPS, trafficops @montgomerycountymd.gov, and that is the email that if you have requests for lane remarking or a stop sign, or the signal phasing is weird and you want to, any of those requests go there. You get a log number. They will research it and follow up with you.
So maybe just keep that in the back of your mind, because even even if that block of Newell is closed, when people are coming the other way and shooting around the corner, there's a lot more pedestrian traffic. It's more accidents.
Yeah, and I think that's a great comment, and something we could look at as part of this is maybe do we do some kind of treatment in the intersection, if it's still an intersection or if it just becomes sort of a curve, do we do some kind of treatment there to encourage people to slow down through engineering? So you may have heard of the 3 E's, engineering, education, and enforcement. I'm on the engineering side, so I always think engineering solutions are the best. I may be biased, but so doing things like maybe narrowing the intersection there, or maybe making it a raised intersection so you have to go over a speed hump when you get there. Those kind of treatments, we could consider something like that. So that's a great comment. So we do have a sign-in sheet. We didn't put a column in there for email lists, but just put a check mark next to your name if you want to be added to an email distribution list, so that the next time we have a meeting, you'll get an email about it. We will, of course, send the postcards out to the same addresses. So if you've got a postcard, you'll get one again. But just in case, and actually Dan might be adding that check box there. So, but we would encourage you, even if you don't want to be on the email list, please at least sign your name so we know, have a record of who was here. But we're going to go ahead and break out into letting you look at the boards and talk to the staff here. If you're here with DOT or one of the consultants, if you just raise your hand so everyone can see who you are. Dan's writing. You saw Dan. Michael Suhong and Michael Mitchell in the back. So thank you everyone for coming this evening, and I'm sure we'll see you again in a few months when we come back with the results. I also have business cards on the table there if you want to grab one of my business cards. 1 second. Let me